So we have already discussed the canonical quantization of the real scalar field. Today, what we shall do is we shall now look at the complex scalar field and try to canonically quantize this field. So the standard prescription is once again to start from the Lagrangian density. So here the Lagrangian density is of this form. If to start with we consider that the field phi is a function, so we are treating the fields as classical fields, then we can write the Lagrangian density in this way: del mu phi star del mu phi minus m square phi star phi. So this tells us that phi is a complex scalar field, and therefore we have put phi star here, and all these are classical fields. So these are not operators. We are not at the quantum level now. We are at the classical level, and phi of x, you can write it in this way as 1 by root 2 phi 1 plus I phi 2, where phi 1 and phi 2 are real scalar fields. Okay? So if we set phi, the complex scalar field, to be this, then the Lagrangian density, if you just substitute this in this Lagrangian density expression, then what we shall get is the following. We shall get half del mu phi 1 del mu phi 1 minus m square phi 1 square. So this is the term that we will get, and then you will get another term where we can just replace phi 1 by phi 2. So we will get this. So phi 1 is a real scalar field, and then we will get another term plus one more term where we replace just phi 1 by phi 2. So the theory of a complex scalar field is with you see that you have a mass term over here. The theory of a complex scalar field is basically equivalent to the theory of two real scalar fields. So it is basically the sum of two real scalar fields is basically the theory of a complex scalar field, provided the mass term, you can consider it from the other way around. You can look at it in a different way. You can write this term, this Lagrangian density, just combine two real scalar fields, three real scalar fields, and if their mass terms are the same, then you can combine it into one single theory of a complex scalar field, provided their mass terms are same. But if the mass terms are not same, suppose you just add two real scalar fields, with one having a mass term m1 and the other having a mass term m2, then you will not be able to combine such a theory into a theory of a complex scalar field. So this you should just remember. Now, once again, so once you have the Lagrangian density, we can construct the action of the theory, or you can start from the action, and this is the Lagrangian density, and so on. Now, the standard prescription is the following: we calculate the canonically conjugate momenta to the field phi, and here we know that phi mu is nothing but del L of del mu phi. This is how phi mu is defined, and the zeroth component of phi mu is nothing but phi, which is the canonically conjugate momenta to the field phi, and that is given by del L del of del 0 phi. So this is This is basically the derivative of the Lagrangian density with respect to phi dot. And you can actually expand this. You have to compute this derivative. So what we can do is, we can look at the Lagrangian density and just expand this Lagrangian density. If you expand this, you will get phi dot star plus other terms. So only the zeroth component in this expression contains the derivative with respect to phi dot. And therefore, if you differentiate with respect to phi dot here, what you will get is del phi dot gives you a phi dot star. So phi is basically phi dot star. And therefore, if you calculate what pi star is nothing but phi dot. So this is the canonical conjugate momentum. So in any classical field theory, the first prescription is to write down the action of the theory. From the action, you find out you just isolate the Lagrangian density of the theory. Once you have the Lagrangian density of the theory, the second step is to write down the canonically conjugate momenta to the field phi. Calculate the canonically conjugate momentum to the field phi, and then calculate what is the Hamiltonian density of the theory. So what will be the Hamiltonian density? The Hamiltonian density will just be the Legendre transform of the Lagrangian density. So you have phi dot plus phi star dot star minus Lagrangian density. Since you have two canonically conjugate momenta, because phi and phi star over here are independent fields. You should remember this. Just as, see, the complex scalar field is basically equivalent or equal to the sum of two real scalar fields. Phi 1 and phi 2 are two real scalar fields having the same mass star. And these phi 1 and phi 2, these two real scalar fields are basically independent scalar fields. Okay? And therefore, this thing must be there, this feature that there are two independent real scalar fields must be also present in this theory, in the theory of the complex scalar field. When you combine phi 1 and phi 2 into a complex scalar field, here phi and phi star are independent scalar fields. And therefore, you have two independent canonically conjugate momenta, and therefore you have to take the sum of two terms. Now you just simply calculate this. What is phi dot? Phi dot is phi star. So this is phi star plus phi star. Phi dot star is phi. Phi dot star is phi, and phi dot is phi star. So you have replaced these terms like this, and then you have minus Lagrangian density. Now Lagrangian density, you have to expand it now. So this gives us 2 pi star phi minus, we have the Lagrangian density is phi dot phi star, this is the first term, and then you will have another term which is nothing but minus del I phi, del I phi star del I phi. We can take the indices down and the cost of the minus sign, the special indices, and then you will have minus n square phi star phi. So this is what we have. Now this is again phi star, phi dot is phi star and phi is just let me see this. I think this is a dot here, not phi star, it is phi dot star. So this term phi dot star is basically pi star phi. So this will cancel one of the pi star phi's here. So these two will cancel, And therefore, you will have pi star pi plus del I pi star del I pi plus m square pi star. So our third step is also complete. You can see that once we have the canonical conjugate momentum, the momentum canonically conjugate to the field phi. From there, you can calculate what the Hamiltonian density is by just Legendre transformation of the Lagrangian density, and this is the expression for the Hamiltonian density. Once you have the expression for the Hamiltonian density, you simply construct a full Hamiltonian of the theory as dq(x). It will be a spatial integral of the Hamiltonian density. So you have the full Hamiltonian of the theory. Okay. So this is the standard prescription that we have at the classical level. Everything here is classical. All the fields are classical fields. Do you have any questions at this point? If you have any question, you can ask at this point. Otherwise, we'll proceed. Okay. So let us proceed. So once you have the Hamiltonian density and the Hamiltonian, now from the Lagrangian density, from this Lagrangian density, you can already see that once again, this is the Klein-Gordon equation that follows from the Lagrangian density. It is very easy to see, and also you will have, since phi and phi star are independent scalar fields, therefore you will also have these. Okay, so this is the Klein-Gordon equation. And as we when we were doing the real scalar field, the way we approached the real scalar field was to look at the classical eigenfunctions of the field phi, of the real scalar field phi, and those were e to the power of I k dot x and e to the power of minus I k dot x, and then we impose periodic boundary conditions and put the field in a box of one-dimensional box of length L or in a three-dimensional box of volume V. Impose periodic boundary conditions, then these k's will become discrete, it will take on discrete values. If you take the box to be infinite, then this k will take a continuum of values, and then you can write down all the eigenfunctions of this phi and phi star of the Klein-Gordon equation, and then you expand the classical field phi in terms of these eigenfunctions, right? This was the normal mode expansion or the Fourier expansion of the classical field phi. So here also we can do the same thing, but there is a slight twist here. What we shall do, the mode expansion for the field phi will be very similar to that of a real scalar field phi, but what we shall do is the following. You can put a summation or you can put an integration, whatever you like. So okay, let me proceed with the summation for the time being. What you will have is 1 to omega k volume V. So when you have a summation, this volume will get replaced, volume factor will get replaced by 2 pi over q. Then you will have a k, which will be power of minus I k dot x. Here you should remember that this k, not all the components of k are independent. K0, the zeroth component of the momentum k, is related to the free momentum k vector in the following way, that k0 is square root of k vector square plus m square, and then the next term will be of this form. can see that I have put a B dagger here in this thing. But to start with, you can put a D or anything. You can put a D and whatever you like. But it is not necessary that you put this B dagger here. You can put whatever. You can put B also. But the important thing is that when you put B dagger here, the interpretation of B dagger, just as we interpreted in the case of the real scalar field, that A is the annihilation operator, A dagger is the creation operator. Here also the interpretations of these AKs and these Bs, when you go to the quantum level, obviously, when you quantize the theory, then the interpretation of this and this will come out to be the following: A will be the annihilation operator of a particle, and B dagger will be the creation operator of an antiparticle. Okay. What is an antiparticle? Let me just mention what is an antiparticle. For example, you take electron and positron. Both have same masses. Both have the same spin. They are spin-half particles, but their charges are opposite. Okay. So that is why the positron is said to be an antiparticle of the electron. The charges are opposite. The interpretations will come out in the correct way. So we write it as AK and B dagger K, but it is not necessary, as I mentioned, that we write it as B dagger K to start with. But since we know the answer from beforehand, we will put the B dagger K, and we will find that B dagger K comes with the correct interpretation that it creates an antiparticle. You can ask.
In case of complex scalar field, can we actually think about antiparticles?
Yes, obviously, you will see why. It's a very good question. We will see why we have to think about antiparticles here. Just let me tell you one thing, then you will hear in a moment, and it will be also substantiated by calculation also. We will see why it comes. See, first question that you can ask is that what is the difference between this mode expansion, the Fourier expansion that we have made, with the real scalar field Fourier expansion? In case of the real scalar field Fourier expansion, this was on A dagger, right? This was A and A star in the case of classical fields, and in the case of quantum fields, this was A and A star, A dagger. Why did we use A and A dagger? Because this is phi dagger has to be equal to phi.
Yes.
Therefore, it automatically tells you that if this is A, this must be A dagger. Okay. Otherwise, phi will not be equal to phi dagger. But for the complex scalar field, phi dagger is not equal to phi. Otherwise, if phi dagger is equal to phi, then it will become a real scalar field.
Yes. Yes.
So, in case of a complex scalar field, phi cannot be equal to phi dagger. It is not equal to phi dagger. And therefore, you can see that if you take phi dagger over here, we must replace this. We must put something else other than A over here. It cannot be A dagger. It has to be something else. Otherwise, if you put here A dagger, then phi dagger will be equal to phi. Then it is a real scalar field. So it must be something else. It must be B, C, or D. So it tells you whatever it is, it must be related to some other particle, some creation or annihilation operator of some other kind of particle. Okay. So that is you can actually say that this must be the creation or annihilation operator of some other particle. What particle I don't know at the moment. Whether it is an antiparticle or whether it is something else, that I don't know. But we will see that this actually creates an antiparticle. This is what is important. Okay. So this is the mode expansion, and from here you can immediately write what phi dagger is. Just take a dagger of this, so this will become A dagger K. So this is phi and phi dagger. These are the normal mode expansions of phi and phi dagger. So A has gives. It turns out that A has the, when you go to the quantum level, A has the interpretation that it annihilates a particle of energy E. This creates an antiparticle of having the same energy E. This creates a particle and this annihilates an antiparticle. So these are the interpretations. Now let us move on. The following. Okay. Now you see that if I make a transformation of phi x going to phi prime x, it is not a space-time transformation. We are not changing what x, we are not making a transformation on x. We make a transformation like this. I q say theta phi x, then phi dagger x will go to phi prime dagger x. Okay, where these are some constants, q and theta, these are some constants. From here, you can immediately see that delta phi of x, if I make an, so this is a transformation. Now, if I consider the infinitesimal version of that, then delta phi of x will be phi dagger x minus phi of x. Okay? And this is equal to, if I make an infinitesimal transformation, I will just expand this. So we will get 1 minus I q theta. This is approximately this phi of x minus phi of x. So this term and this term will get cancelled. This is therefore minus I q theta. So this is what we have. And therefore, from here, delta phi dagger x will be equal to plus I q theta phi dagger of x. Okay. So this is what we have for infinitesimal transformations. So if we do that, we can now see that you can write down the corresponding from Noether's theorem. You can actually write down what the important thing. Okay, let me just tell you what is important about this transformation. If you make such transformations, these are infinitesimal versions of this transformation. If you make this transformation, you can see that under these transformations, the Lagrangian density goes to Lagrangian density prime, and that is equal to L. So what we see is that under these transformations, the theory remains, the theory of the complex scalar field, the Lagrangian density remains invariant. So this transformation is basically a symmetry transformation. Okay. So under these transformations, the theory remains invariant, Lagrangian density remains invariant, and therefore you can say that you can immediately say that from Noether's theorem there are Noether charges and currents. So let me write down the pore current density. At some point of time, I shall actually, if I get some time, then I shall actually try to derive the Noether's theorem for you. This is a very important theorem that one needs to learn in classical field theory. Maybe you have learned the theorem, but I shall once again repeat what Noether's theorem is. But for the time being, what I shall do is I shall take the result of result from Noether's theorem and just write down the expression for the pore current. So J nu is given by pi nu delta phi plus pi nu star delta phi star. So this, I'm writing stars because this is at the classical level. If you want to, you can write down, see, Noether charges and Noether currents make sense only at the, they are basically at the classical level, but you can actually write down their quantum versions just by replacing the phi's and the pi's by their operators, by operators. Okay, at the quantum level, phi and pi will be operators, and then also you can write down the versions of Noether charges and currents. But for the time being, I'm at the classical level, and therefore I'm using stars. So now you can see that from this expression of the Noether charge, pi mu, just keep it as it is, pi mu. But what is delta phi? Delta phi is this. It is minus I cube theta phi plus, what is pi mu star? Pi mu star, we just keep it like this. But what is delta phi star? Delta phi star is I cube theta phi star. We can set for the time being, we can set theta is equal to 1. Let's set theta is equal to 1 for the time being. And now, what you will get from here is the following. We get I times Q I mu star phi star minus pi. So this is what you will get from let me remind you what pi mu is. This is what pi mu is, and pi mu you can immediately calculate from the Lagrangian density. Pi mu is nothing but del mu phi star. Okay, this is what pi mu is. It is del mu of phi star, and therefore you can now replace pi mu in this expression. And if you do that, you will get the following result for J mu. Therefore, J mu, this is equal to just, let me just write down this result once again. This is I cube times pi mu star pi star pi mu pi, and that is equal to, since pi mu is this, therefore pi mu star is del mu pi times phi star minus pi mu is del mu phi star pi. So this is the expression for J mu. This is the complete expression for J mu that you get, that you can actually get from the Noether's theorem. Okay. You can do one more thing also. Just as you remember that phi of phi is basically 1 by root 2 phi 1 plus phi I phi 2, where phi 1 and phi 2 are real scalar fields. Now phi is the canonically conjugate momentum to the field phi. So here also you can write this as 1 by root 2 phi 1 plus phi 2. Where phi 1 and phi 2 are real momentum fields. Okay. Phi 1 is canonically conjugate to the real scalar field phi 1, and phi 2 is canonically conjugate to the real scalar field phi 2. And here, phi 1 is phi 1 dot, and phi 2 is phi 2 dot. I just keep these expressions for completeness because you you may require these expressions at any point of time. Now, just as when we quantized the real scalar field, we imposed canonical equal time commutation relations between phi and pi. Phi was the real scalar field. So here also you can impose equal time commutation relations between phi 1 and phi 1, phi 2 and phi 2. Equal time commutation relations. First of all, they will have Poisson brackets, equal time Poisson brackets. Now you elevate them to commutation relations, and you will get the equal time commutation relation between those things. Once you impose equal time commutation relations between phi 1 and phi 2, these are the only non-trivial relations. You can immediately see that the equal time commutation relation between phi and pi will be the following. So now we are at the quantum level, we are quantizing the theory. So phi is an operator, pi is an operator, and h bar is equal to 1, and also c is equal to 1. So we are in natural units. So this is what we have. So we have now quantized the theory. This is our postulate. This we cannot derive, but we are postulating that these are our equal time commutation relations. And if you postulate this equal time commutation relation, you can immediately see, or you can immediately show, just as we did in the case of the real scalar field. Let me go to the other side of the board. Just as we did in the case of the real scalar field, you have imposed commutation relations between phi and pi. So you can immediately show that if you write down the inverse Fourier transformations, you can immediately show that A, K will have the only non-trivial commutation relations will be between AK and A dagger K, and BK and B dagger K and BK. Okay? What you will get is AK, A dagger K commutator will be equal to delta K K prime, and BK, B dagger K prime commutator will be equal to delta K K prime. You can show that. I leave this as an exercise for you. Please check it. Starting from this commutation relation. So now these are indeed operators. A, B, B dagger, A dagger, these are indeed operators. Because the left hand side phi and phi dagger are operators. Once again, what you can do is you can write AK as 1 by root 2 A1 K plus I A2 K. Okay? You can decompose A in this way, and BK will be then A1K minus I A2K. And the only non-trivial commutation relations will be between A1, A1, A2, A2. So A1K, A1 dagger K will be equal to K prime will be equal to delta K prime.
Sir, how can we write this? I mean, this thing.
Which one?
A
This
and B.
thing.
A. Yes.
This and this,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
See, you don't need to write it, but I'm just telling you, you can actually write it because, see, you should just remember the following. See, what we are doing here, we are writing it at the level of what? At the level of the complex scalar field, right? Commutation
Yes, sir.
relation between phi and pi. That is what we are doing. Now, you should always keep in mind that the theory of the complex scalar field is basically equal to the theory of two real scalar fields having the same mass term. So you could have actually proceeded in the following way. You have one scalar field, real scalar field phi 1 and the other phi 2. For phi 1 you introduce mode expansions phi 1, that will be A1k, A dagger 1k, and phi 2 it will be similarly you will have some other things over here, right? You will have some other things standing over here, and then you can actually combine it into the theory of one scalar field, and then what you actually get is you can actually combine the A1 A2s in this way. For phi 2 you can write it as what? A2k 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 dagger for phi 2. And then in phi 1 and phi 2, you know that phi 1 and phi 1 plus I phi 2 is basic with a 1 by root 2 is basically phi. And phi has the mode expansion like this in terms of A and B dagger. Now you just combine it and you will get these results, TK and PK. Is it clear, Jarshi?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So you can actually you can play with these things yourself. You just play with these things that whether these things really are true or not. I can guarantee you that these things are true because I've checked it. Okay, good. Now let us come. Since we have everything, we have now quantized the theory. We have the expression for the Noether for current density, so to say. We'll now write down what the Noether charge is. So the Noether charge you have already learned in your classical field theory course or in some classical mechanics course that it is basically the spatial integral of the time component of the forecurrent. So you take set mu is equal to 0 in the expression for J mu and then integrate J0 over the space. It's a spatial integral. So this is how the Noether charge is defined. Okay, so this charge is basically a conserved quantity, and you can show that this is a conserved quantity. You just take a derivative of that. You take dq dt, and this will give you dq x del 0 j0x. Use the continuity equation. So continuity equation tells you that del 0 j0 plus del I ji is equal to 0. This is a continuity equation. And therefore, you can write this as dq x minus del I gi. So this is now del I gi, and this is a special integral. So you apply Gauss divergence theorem, and if you apply Gauss divergence theorem, this will be surface integral. Take the surface to infinity, the currents go to 0. This is equal to 0. Therefore, you have shown that dq dt is 0. And therefore, q is a conserved quantity. Q is independent of time, it's a constant. Okay? So if you define the charge in this way, this is the Noether charge. This charge is a conserved quantity. Good. Now we are at the quantum level. So you have the expression for J0. What is the expression for J0? From here you can find it out immediately. J0 is nothing but IQ del 0 phi star minus phi star phi. So this is what J0 is. What we do is substitute J0 in this expression for Q. So if you do that, then this will be equal to integral dq takes. You can take IQ outside 0 phi star minus del 0 phi star phi. Okay, this 0 is on top, you can take it downstairs because our signature is mostly negative, and similarly you can take this also downstairs. So this is what Q is. This is the expression for Q. And remember, now we are at the quantum level. Because phi and phi star, these are all operators. It is better to replace phi star by phi dagger. And Q hat therefore is also an operator. It is an operator. And what we need to do, we shall do that in the next class, in the next lecture. What we need to do is very simple. We have the mode expansion for phi and phi dagger. We need to substitute the mode expansion for phi and phi dagger in this expression. So this is Q hat. All these are operators. So we need to substitute the mode expansion here and just do the calculation and see what Q hat comes out to be. So this is the calculation that we shall do in the next class. This is an important calculation and we have to do it. And this will answer Shoham's question also, that why do you say that these are really particles and antiparticles? So you will get all the interpretations from there. All the interpretations will come out from there. Okay?
Okay.
So let us stop here at this moment, because now I think you have Professor Lahiri's class, right? From 11:45. So let us stop here. We shall continue from here in the next lecture on Wednesday. Wednesday we shall start from 2 o'clock. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay. Please come at 2 o'clock and we shall start from 2 o'clock. Thank you very much for today.